It was one of those nights that felt heavier than usual. The moon hung low, dimmed by thick layers of mist rolling through the countryside. Ethan Moore, a 34-year-old graphic designer working remotely, sat alone in his small wooden house on the edge of a silent field. He loved the isolation. No traffic, no neighbors, no noise. Just him, his work, and the rhythmic ticking of an old wall clock. But that night, something felt wrong. Even the crickets were silent. The wind that usually whistled through the trees had stopped completely, as if nature itself was holding its breath. Ethan noticed it but brushed the thought aside. He poured himself a cup of coffee, turned on his favorite late-night show, and tried to relax. The fire in the fireplace crackled, but every sound felt amplified. The creak of the floorboards, the distant rustle of leaves, even the faint hum of his refrigerator. He glanced at the clock, 11:57 p.m., 3 minutes to midnight. His phone buzzed. No signal. Odd. It always worked here. A faint chill crept across the room, brushing his skin like an invisible hand. The temperature seemed to drop. He pulled his blanket tighter and told himself it was just the October cold. Outside, fog thickened, swallowing the front porch and turning the world beyond the window into a blurry gray void. Ethan leaned back, trying to ignore the eerie stillness. But deep inside, a strange tension grew, a feeling that something was out there, watching, waiting. The house groaned as the wood expanded, a sound he'd heard countless times before. Yet tonight, it made his stomach twist. He took another sip of coffee, trying to calm himself. That was when it began. A single, soft knock echoed from the front door, sharp, deliberate, and far too real. The knock came again, louder this time. 3 steady taps, knock, knock, knock. Ethan froze in place, his mug trembling slightly in his hands. He turned down the TV volume, the silence that followed pressing against his ears like a heavy weight. Probably some delivery guy lost again, he muttered, though he knew that wasn't possible. He lived miles from town, and no one delivered here past sunset. Still, he tried to convince himself it was nothing. Maybe the wind, maybe an animal bumping the door, but this knock, it had rhythm, human rhythm. Ethan stood, hesitated, and walked toward the hallway leading to the front door. The house felt longer than ever, every step echoing off the wooden floorboards. His breath became shallow. The digital clock on the wall blinked 12:03 a.m., the start of a new day, but the beginning of something far darker. He reached the door and peered through the peephole. Nothing, just fog. Thick, endless fog swallowing his front yard. He could barely see the outline of his porch railing. No movement, no light, just silence. Another knock. This one was softer, almost cautious, like whoever was out there didn't want to wake anyone else. The thought made Ethan's stomach twist. Anyone else? He lived alone. He called out, "Who's there?" His voice cracked slightly, betraying his unease. No reply, only the sound of his heartbeat pounding in his ears. He waited for a moment longer, then decided to ignore it. He locked the door, drew the curtains, and went back to the couch, forcing a laugh to break the tension. The show flickered on the screen again, but he wasn't watching. Then, just as he tried to relax, there came another knock. Softer, closer, almost like it came from inside the house. Ethan's pulse hammered in his chest. That last sound hadn't come from the porch. It was closer, like the walls themselves were breathing. He muted the TV again, the sudden silence wrapping around him like a shroud. For a few long seconds, there was nothing, and then he heard it. A faint voice. A whisper. So soft, he thought it might be his imagination. Ethan. His name. Clear. Drawn out. Spoken with a strange familiarity, as though the voice knew him well. He spun toward the door, eyes wide, breath fogging in the air. "Who's there?" he demanded. No answer, just the whisper again, this time slightly distorted, as if coming through a wall of static. Ethan. He grabbed his phone, trying to check the security camera feed. The screen flickered, then went black. The Wi-Fi was dead. No service, only a faint hiss of static. He tapped it again, and for half a second, the live feed appeared, showing his porch. Empty. And yet, in the lower corner of the frame, the fog seemed to twist into the faint shape of a figure. Tall, still, watching. The whisper returned, this time from right behind the door. "Let me in." Ethan's skin crawled. He stumbled back, nearly knocking over the lamp. He tried to laugh it off, convincing himself it was just the wind carrying sounds through the valley. But deep down, he knew no wind could shape a whisper into his name. He pressed his ear gently to the wooden door, barely breathing. For a moment, there was silence. Then 3 gentle knocks vibrated against the other side. He jerked away, eyes wide. The air grew colder, and a chill ran down his spine. He turned toward the fireplace for warmth, only to find the fire completely extinguished. Ethan's hands trembled as he stood in the middle of the room, staring at the lifeless fireplace. The once warm glow had been replaced by a hollow darkness that seemed to swallow every sound. The temperature kept dropping, and he could see his breath now, white puffs in the dim air. Then it came again. Bang, bang, bang. The second knock wasn't polite. It was forceful, desperate, like someone demanding to be let in. The sound rattled the picture frames on the wall and made the windows shiver in their panes. Ethan's heart pounded in his throat. "Who is it?" he shouted, his voice cracking. No reply, only silence thick enough to choke on. He grabbed his flashlight from the drawer, flicked it on, and aimed it at the door. The beam cut through the dust in the air, but revealed nothing unusual. Then, as if mocking him, the door handle twitched. Just once. Ethan froze. He ran to the window beside the door, trying to peek through the curtain. The fog outside was so thick it pressed against the glass like smoke. He could barely see his porch steps, but there, a flicker of movement, a faint shadow gliding past, slow and soundless. The lights in the house flickered, humming as though the electricity itself was nervous. His phone on the table vibrated suddenly, lighting up with a notification. Motion detected. Front door. Ethan's throat went dry. He opened the feed again, but this time the camera showed something different. A figure, standing right at the edge of the porch, facing the door. Tall, motionless, its head tilted slightly to one side, as if listening. Then the camera glitched, freezing on a single frame. 2 faint blue glows where eyes should be. And the knock came again, this time right next to his ear. Ethan stumbled back, his flashlight beam shaking wildly across the room. The last knock hadn't come from the door. It had come from right beside him. He swung the light toward the sound, but there was nothing there. Only the curtains swayed gently, as if disturbed by a passing breeze, yet no window was open. His chest rose and fell rapidly. "This isn't happening," he whispered. "It's just stress." The motion sensor notification blinked again on his phone. He forced himself to look. The camera feed flickered, static crawling across the screen. But between the glitches, the fog outside moved unnaturally, twisting, thickening, forming the outline of a tall, human-like shape. At first, Ethan thought it was a trick of light. But then 2 faint orbs of cold blue light blinked open where the eyes should be. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, staring directly into the camera. Ethan's hands shook. He turned the phone off and whispered, No, this can't be real." The temperature dropped again. He could see his own breath hanging in the air. The lights dimmed, flickered once, and then stabilized. Slowly, he turned his head toward the front door window. Through the frosted glass, a silhouette stood, perfectly still, perfectly human, yet somehow wrong. Its shoulders too narrow, its arms too long, its head tilting slightly, as if curious. The faint blue glow pulsed behind the glass, casting a ghostly hue across the floor. Ethan raised his flashlight, hand trembling. The beam cut through the fog and hit the window, empty. The figure was gone. But before he could exhale, condensation began forming on the glass. Words appeared slowly, as if written by an invisible finger. "Let me in." Ethan dropped the flashlight. The light rolled across the floor, stopping at the door, where the shadow of the figure had returned. And this time, it was closer. Ethan stood frozen, his heartbeat thundering in his ears. The words on the glass, "Let me in," began to fade, smearing into mist as if the fog itself had swallowed them. His trembling hands hovered over the lock, unsure whether to turn it or run. Every instinct screamed to stay away. But another part of him, the part that needed to understand, refused to leave the mystery unanswered. He swallowed hard. "Who are you?" he called out, voice shaking. No response, just the same steady silence pressing against the walls. Then 3 knocks again, slower, heavier. Boom, boom, boom. Something inside him snapped. He couldn't take the suspense anymore. With a trembling breath, Ethan twisted the lock, his heart skipping as the latch clicked open. The door creaked slowly, inch by inch, until the night air poured in. Cold, damp, silent. The porch was empty. The fog hung thick and unmoving, like a frozen sea of smoke. The air smelled metallic, almost electric. He stepped out cautiously, his flashlight beam slicing through the whiteness. Nothing. No footprints. No shape. No sound. Ethan turned back toward the house, relieved and confused. "See? Just my imagination," he muttered. He reached for the door handle to shut it, and stopped. There, on the inside surface of the door, were handprints. Dozens of them. Small, pale smudges covering the wood from top to bottom, like someone or something had been pushing to get in for hours. His breath caught. Slowly, he backed away. His flashlight flickered. Then the wind whispered behind him, soft, almost childlike. "Ethan!" He froze. The voice came not from the fog, but from inside the house. Ethan turned slowly toward the doorway. The warm light from the living room spilled out just enough to reveal a tall, shadowy figure standing there. It was already inside. For a moment, Ethan couldn't move. His brain refused to process what his eyes were seeing. The figure stood motionless in his living room doorway, its head tilted at an impossible angle, its body outlined faintly by the blue glow that pulsed like a heartbeat. The fog behind Ethan thickened, curling through the open door and spilling into the house as though it belonged there. He stumbled backward, flashlight trembling in his hand. "Who are you?" he shouted, his voice cracking under terror. The figure didn't answer. Instead, it took a single step forward, slow, deliberate, the sound of bare feet against the wooden floor echoing like a slow drumbeat. Ethan lifted the flashlight beam toward its face, and what he saw made his stomach twist. It looked human, but not quite. The skin was pale and wet, like it had been soaking for too long. Its eyes glowed bright blue, reflecting the light with an unnatural shimmer. And when it opened its mouth, the sound that came out wasn't a voice. It was static. "Why didn't you answer me earlier?" Ethan screamed, slamming the door shut behind him, but it was too late. The fog filled the room, snuffing out the lights in an instant. The fire reignited suddenly, burning a sickly blue. His phone vibrated one last time in his pocket. Motion detected. Living room. The screen blinked, showing the feed from the indoor camera. The figure was standing directly behind him. Ethan turned. The camera dropped to the floor. The video feed crackled, distorting into static before freezing on a final image. The front door wide open, fog spilling out, and Ethan's silhouette standing lifeless in the glow. Then, black screen. A final whisper faded through the audio. "Don't ignore the knock." And the footage ended.